Hello friends, how you doing? It's Matt and you listen to the Looking Sideways Action Sports podcast. Yeah, it's my podcast where I try and uncover the most fascinating stories in action sports and other related endeavours. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoy this one. Before I get started, just thanks to everybody who got in touch to let me know how rough I sounded at the last intro, which was, I'll be honest, I did record it extremely hungover in my effort to beat the Olympic deadline. And I'm glad a few people picked up on that because it was it was a tough day, that one. And clearly my efforts to disguise that in the intro did not work in the slightest. So yeah, feeling a little bit better today. So hopefully a little bit sprightlier with this one. So episode 34, I believe. I'm going to check actually because I keep getting it wrong because there's been that many of them. Whatever episode it is. My guest today is it is episode 34, I've just checked. Anyway, it might well be my favourite episode, this. Certainly one of the most enjoyable conversations I've yet had. So see what you think. But yeah, that's because my guest for this one really is a true legend of the snowboarding world. It's the great David Benedek. So for the uninitiated, who is David Benedek? Well, for 10 years, Benedek bestrode the global snowboarding scene like a creative colossus, really. From the minute he burst onto the wider scene with a podium place at the Air and Style in 99, swiftly followed by the opening section in TB10, here was a progressive, inspiring snowboarder who could do it all with style, grace, and the creativity that seemed to define the very best of what snowboarding had to offer. And amazingly, continued to do that at an incredible level for the next 10 years. Look back at David's CV and what you've got is a roll call of some of the noughties defining snowboarding moments. You've got the robot food years with Afterbang, Lame and his sections therein. You've got the 91 words for snow blank paper projects. You've got the double cork, gap years. Plenty more really if you do a bit of digging. And yet there will be stuff on the show notes if you want to find out more. Anyway, then with seeming abruptness, he stepped back from professional snowboarding at the end of his 20s, which was at the time yet another forward-thinking move. Not for David, years spent eking out a living or rinsing the industry for all he could. Instead, he left professional snowboarding on his own terms and embarked upon yet another insanely ambitious creative project, the book Current State, in which he interviewed countless influential snowboarders and pioneers of the scene, and also came up with this ridiculously creative and ambitious format, which presumably gave the printers behind the book a nosebleed when they saw the flat plan, which is something I did mention to him during the conversation. And yeah, it took a few years over that, and the book came out to great acclaim. And then we didn't really hear from him again. The last time I personally saw him was 3 years ago at a party in Munich when he explained he was at film school and he was working as a creative director at an agency in the town. You get the point. Here was undoubtedly one of the most interesting career arcs in snowboarding, or in any other action sport if you ask me. Now, I've known David since the start of his career, having first met him in about 1999, 2000, and although we've never seen each other that often, we've always got on really well. So I was really pleased when he agreed to catch up in Munich at the end of January 2018 to come on the show. And as you're going to hear, it was quite a chat, this one. Of course, we covered some of the obvious stuff. You know, we did talk about Afterbang, robot food. We did talk about how he got into snowboarding. But really, this one is a roving, freewheeling, all-encompassing conversation in the finest Looking Sideways tradition, really. And I had a feeling it'd go like this, so I just turned up without a set list of questions or any desire to steer the conversation in any particular direction, hit record, and sat back to see where it went. And as you're going to hear, he's a very, very bright and articulate man, David, frighteningly so when you consider English is not his first language, with carefully backed up opinions on all manner of subjects. In this case, we cover the powerful sway of American culture, the pain of growing up, how creativity works, the emotional dullness of being an adult compared to a child, where you find flow in everyday life, the fundamental illusion of certain signs and symbols, and plenty more weighty, fascinating stuff. As you're going to be able to tell, we had a great time recording this one. And yeah, having recorded all this intro, I think on reflection, it is definitely one of my favourite chats of all the ones I've been lucky enough to have so far. So enough from me. Get the headphones on. Well, you probably already got them on, but you know what I mean. Grab a brew, sit back and enjoy my conversation with David Benedek, snowboarding's great connector. Enjoy. Does that work? Is that
yeah,
cool?
totally. Just need to.
Let me just turn it up a little bit. I'm going to record it on Logic as well. Just had a few disasters doing this over the months, like lost one.
I feel you, yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Did you tell the person that you lose it?
Well, it was actually James Stenterford, who you probably know, who's like a really good friend. So he was pretty cool with it.
So did you redo it or no?
Yeah, I redid it. Yeah,
wow.
And he was cool with it. Yeah, but you know,
redoing is hard for the energy. It's like you almost need to talk about something totally different.
Yeah, exactly. Because you did. I mean, you must have done what, like 25 for current state?
Yeah, I only really blew one.
Right.
And this is something that I never told him, but I met.
Just place it there.
Sit up there.
Actually, that'd be fine. There we go.
Do you know Bob Klein? You know who that is?
Yeah, I know Bob. He's the agent, and he's like the old school.
Yeah.
Kind of like came up with Kidwell,
he
didn't he?
was really, really cool, and he like hooked me up with Palmer, and
right.
And I interviewed him as well because I thought it would be nice to have an agent in there.
Yeah. He's like proper seeing it all, hasn't he, Bob? You know.
Yeah, and after like 2 hours of talking, like I remember like hitting my iPhone and just seeing that it's like the count says 0000, so
right,
it either froze or something. Never, and I just took it. I was like, thanks.
Right.
And I just never told him that.
You didn't tell him?
I didn't tell him because I wasn't sure. Actually, I think I knew while I did it. I was like, this is great input that I will feed into all the other ones, but I don't think it will be a standalone interview. So I kind of knew maybe right there that I wasn't going to use it.
Right.
But maybe I also...
That confirmed it.
that confirmed that I didn't have an option.
You were
and
like,
I knew,
yeah, I might not use this one.
And I was really, really, how do you say it? Like, like appreciative of his time and stuff. And so when I saw it, I was like, that's nothing I can say right now.
No. You can't say to somebody
so
like...
I never told him.
I hope we're not jinxing this one, by the way. But you can't say like, yeah, all right, that didn't actually record, I did one where I did it walking around carrying the mic. And we'd done about 5 minutes, and I realised only my mic was working, and his mic hadn't been working. Kind of got away with that one, but yeah. Hence the double recording strategy now.
Since then, doing the same thing to like old iPhone, regular iPhone. I mean, because I don't need the audio. I didn't need it back then, so I just used it for transcribing. Yeah.
So we were just saying before we started recording, I think the last time we saw each other was 3 years ago at ISPO. So that's got to be right, hasn't it? And you were at film school, and you were doing the creative director at the agency. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So where are we at now? Is that what you're still doing? Or?
That's what I'm still doing, although not at that agency.
Okay.
It's that was my friend's agency, and I mean they're pretty big. I think they're about 25 employees or something. So that was quite a. And I think coming from what I did, which was anything I did was more like lock yourself into a room and it's done when it's done, and especially also looking at the book. I mean, I had no idea what I was doing, but if you just sit down and you just wait until it's done, until you figure it out, then I was able to do that. And
it looks like that's kind of how you've like working over the years, like have an idea and then work out how you're going to like achieve it, basically. Yeah. So that didn't quite gel with the agency.
I think essentially it comes down to craft because anything like words or images or anything, that's also something I think I realized clearly in film school is that anything is really a craft, and it's painful until you've. I think it always kind of stays painful in the sense that you're always fighting against your own inability, no matter on which level. I'm sure if you're really good at something, it's still fighting, but there's a certain I don't know, like threshold or whatever, that if you don't make it past that, it's a lot of fighting. And I think I a lot of times I'm like underneath that, but I can take the time to still have a result I'm happy with. And then that was quite the experience in the agency to figure out, like, okay, so this is a pace. This is the real pace.
Yeah.
This is the pace of the real world.
The commercial pace.
Yeah, and also especially I think I was kind of caught between the chairs of still wanting to design stuff and actually be hands-on, and but having to direct,
Okay.
really. And so I think in the middle of all that, I realized it's I don't know. I think I did it pretty much full time for about a year and a half or 2 years, and then I kind of slowly reduced my time there, and I started doing my own projects again, and so that's what I'm doing now. I'm kind of doing the same thing, which is like corporate designs and so brand and design work, basically. But I do it with a small group of freelancers, and I have my own clients, and eventually I don't know, maybe that will pan out into an actual agency type of thing, but it might also not. I mean, in the creative world, people they tend to throw around buzzwords, and one of the most recent ones is that we might be in the post-agency age, because I mean, literally, what agencies facilitated, I think, up to now was the access to the right creative people, which has gotten so much easier.
Yeah.
That that's not all. I'm not saying that's assumptions necessarily correct that we're in that age, but it's something that I think clients are buying, which is why I can do jobs that I find interesting without needing like a back end of like 15 employees or something,
Yeah, and the kind of collateral that comes with that as well.
Exactly. I mean, I'm sure you guys work similarly, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're a pretty small team, but it's interesting because it sounds like for you that enables you to focus on the creative work, which is obviously what you're interested in, because once you start going down that route, then you have more things to do that detract from the creative side, don't you? Which sounds like that might have been the thing in the agency path that you didn't quite.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure actually, because I kind of have. It's such a weird. Creativity is such a. I mean, just the description of creativeness and I'm not entirely sure if I'm even like an actually like particularly creative person, because I don't really enjoy like coming up with new ideas. I enjoy connecting things and maybe even more like compiling things. So everything I realized, like in retrospect, everything I've always done is only compile things. I don't really create. Occasionally I give it a form, but I'm not really someone who's like, I'm not an artist or anything.
That's as valid though, I always think. I mean, that's how a lot of artists work. I mean, if you look at somebody, do you know Jeremy Deller, the artist? Mm-hmm. He's a Turner Prize winner, and he works in a really similar way. Has an idea, and then finds the people to execute the idea, and is a facilitator as well. But I think it's valid. I think the idea of like creativity being like the artist in the garret, like coming up with the spark of inspiration. Yeah. The older I get, the more I just think it's the work, isn't it? It's actually doing the work.
Yeah, I think that's it's like the banality of actually sitting down and doing something and like powering through all this shit that in the end might end up with something decent. But I'm not. I think I might be totally okay if I wasn't a creative person. Like if that definition didn't apply, I'm totally cool. And I totally agree. I think this aura of the artist, or this like the value that society puts on the artist and on this free spirited thinking, I think it's also partially because like people love the idea of a genius, of people. Because fucking life's so confusing, we all wish there was someone out there who knew what they were doing. It'd be terrifying to find out that all these like legends don't have a fucking idea,
But it's probably true.
It's probably true, and I think, I don't know, but I do have to say I struggle immensely with like creative pressure. Like,
that was going to be my next question, because what you said earlier was really interesting, because you were talking about, what the way I defined it was, you have an idea, then you find a way of doing it and you work it out, and you can look at that throughout your career, whether it was like making films, producing, making books, like, all these things that you've done. But that takes a lot of either like ignoring the inner voice of self-doubt, or a lot of confidence, to actually think, I'm just going to do that and I'm going to work it out. Is that something that comes easy to you?
No, I think, and now like maybe like having exited this bubble of inflated self-confidence that comes with being an athlete, that's just like, I mean, this is something I've talked quite a lot about with like my friends, and also like former pro snowboarder friends. How funny it is that, like normally I think when you grow up as a teenager or as a kid, you have this like dream in your head that you're something like incredibly unique. Everyone has, and I think, of course I don't want to say we're all unique and all this, but I think everyone wishes that there was something, and then I think most of the time you have to kind of, and this is, I think, the painful act of growing up, is exactly. Like you have to realize
it's growing up.
That's what growing up is maybe like leaving those dreams behind and saying like, hey, I'm kind of just like everyone else.
Yeah.
And we just have to sit down and just do it, and that's cool. And then I think maybe working through the pain of that realization, and the problem is, but what happened to me and to like all these pro snowboarders, you're like 16 and suddenly like
you're getting validation that you are special.
Exactly. You're getting like 200% validation.
Yeah.
And I think so maybe that growing up part, it comes afterwards, and maybe even more painfully than, I don't know. But yeah, so I was laughing about that a lot. But I mean, of course, like when your question was about like this absence of doubt, and I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna make the best book in the world. And then, of course, I stumbled along the way, and it was painful and super a lot of work. But had I gone to, for instance, like graphic design school, I would have never dared to make something like that, because the people next to me wouldn't dare to make something like that. So why should I? And so that was a huge difference in doing something that still came out of this like total denial of the rest of the world, and just I basically locked myself in a room and did this, and that's how I worked before. And then going to film school was kind of like, it was almost like ego exorcism, you go there, and I think I'm a fairly grounded guy, so when I meet my fellow students, I'm like a part of the pack, but that also means that I apply their rules to my work, which also means that, of course, suddenly I don't think I'm going to make the best film in the world. I just think I'm just going to make, just a normal student film. Like that's the horizon that I then subscribe to. And I noticed the difference that
Did it affect the work?
Yeah, massively, I think.
In what way?
I think in the way that I think no matter what you do creatively, especially I think it applies to everything, but I think it's very easily visible in narrative form, such as like fictional film. Every story has been told already 100 times over. The only thing you can add is if you give it your personal point of view and not trying to replicate, something that you think is en vogue or if you're really good at replicating, that could totally work, but
it won't be original.
Yeah, you won't be original, and I think that's what happened. I remember it's a fairly like renowned film school, and so I knew some of the stuff that came out of there, and I always thought it's kind of weird how, like pseudo intellectual and really like dark and heavy and slow and like dramatic everything that came out of there was, and like 10 months into it, my stuff looked exactly the same.
Right.
Like, I mean, I'm not kidding. The first film I did was about a girl struggling with bulimia who goes back to her parents' place for a birthday party. Like, and at least I have to say that it's but I still have to like just smirk about the fact that that's me. in reality, I worked with someone on the script that had a very personal connection to that topic. So I was like, okay, this is great. I find this really interesting. I can, this is like more like the paint that I'm working with.
Yeah.
But it's still, it's not necessarily, it wasn't necessarily me. It was like trying to fit in with what was expected. And so, so I think there's a huge difference between, ignoring your limitations and the world around you, and I'm not entirely sure which one's better. I still think, like, I feel most comfortable when I'm in my room. I mean, I have a home office, I sit here. I'm much more comfortable here than I am in, like, I used to rent, like, office space and stuff, because suddenly you're in the real world. And I kind of like...
You prefer the act of, like, locking yourself away, if you like. Does that enable you to do the work? Because a lot of it as well, I think, is about giving yourself permission in how you're going to do it, and thinking about what's actually going to work best for me here. Sounds like that's what you're almost working out when you're making these decisions, really.
Yeah, and I think it really is trying to ignore, like, that, also the fact that you might not be able, you might not be at a point where you should be doing a corporate design for a big corporation, because, like, I had never done that before or something. And it's much easier to do that if you're in your room and you can kind of convince yourself, like, it's good, that's totally fine. Yeah,
give yourself permission to be good enough, almost.
Yeah, and so, but essentially, I think, the goal should be to be able to be out there and still be able to create, because I think that essentially that would be actual self-confidence, in what you do. So
what are you working on right now?
Right now, I actually went back after the agency. I actually went back to film school and just finished everything besides my kind of final project. And actually, I think maybe for the first time since I went there, I'm writing something that I think is kind of mine. So I'm writing a screenplay. Ideally, 50% of the time, and 50% of the time I'm doing, like, the brand and design work. Yeah. But realistically, I'm doing 90% of work and then 10% of writing. But yeah, so the work stuff is kind of all sorts of brand strategy and design work. So it's last big project. It was for like a hotel corporation. Like they're one of the biggest in Germany, and they created a new brand, like they branched off a brand.
Sure.
And it started out with just, like, coming up with, the actual the logo and the font, and start out with everything that is corporate design, which is like the image style. And once we did that, and they opened their first hotel, I ended up doing everything from, like, even the, like, signage design in the hotel, the website, and I even have, like, a text, like, copywriters working for me. So it's basically I act as the agency, even though everyone are just, like, friends and people from my network that I work with. So.
And what about the screenplay? Is that well, the screenplays, by the sound of it, is that?
Well, it's one.
But and again, you're self-taught. I take it. Did you taught, or did you study that? Is that one of the things you learned at the film school? Like that form.
I mean, I did study fictional directing, so that would be a part of it. And what they teach, kind of, or what the school is really about, like about directors as authors, like, not only as, like, a craftsmen that you can, couple people certainly, they don't really realize their own scripts, but I think mostly people out of that school, they also write and direct.
Yeah.
And odd enough, it's something that they should be teaching, and I think they probably are if you're taking the right classes. Everything I learned about writing, I think I learned actually from books.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
which is not a whole lot, which is also due to the fact that I think the structure of a screenplay is fairly simple, actually.
Yeah, it's pretty formulaic, isn't
Yeah.
it? Like 3-act structure.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, they broke it down like a science. Like you can put it.
You can plot it to the minute, basically, can't you?
It's ridiculous, and it's
Yeah.
really funny when you. I used to be kind of anti these formulaic approaches,
Yeah.
but then you look at even films that, in my mind, really fall out of this like mainstream constructed way, and every film that works pretty much fits within that formula.
Yeah.
You know?
Inciting incident, like the beats in certain minutes,
It's
isn't it?
crazy.
Yeah.
And it's really funny now that like I'm aware of where the beats, where's the break between the different acts and what's supposed, and there's like the false victory here and then et cetera, et cetera. And you look at movies, and I usually don't think about this kind of stuff if a movie's good, but if a movie suddenly like I'm out of it, I instantly noticed like, oh, this is where they veered off the the formula, and it's really, and it's kind of
or it's clumsy, like
or it's clumsy,
clumsy joins and crowbarring in those elements. I mean, it's brilliant when you see a film that does it really artfully, isn't it? That you, like you say, that you don't notice it and does sort of, because the whole idea is obviously to take you on an emotional journey, isn't it? I think.
Yeah.
So obviously it's a few years since you did anything specifically around snowboarding. It probably was the book, right? And that must be, what is that, 10 years ago now? No, less.
No, it's less. With 2018, I think the book, I think it says, it's weird, I can only remember because I think it says, it came out January or February 2012.
Okay, but you worked on it for like 3 or 4 years.
3 years, yeah, pretty much 3 years. So it's
current state. The book is, I should say, and I will link to this. Did you sell them all?
Yeah.
You only did a quite limited run though, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I did 2,000 copies, which was quite the investment because the production cost was so high. And yeah, I mean, it wasn't really. I would have liked to make more, but I realized, that like basically that was quite the investment up front, and then took me a little while to sell them. I mean, it's really funny with books, and this is, I guess, supposedly you might know this. Supposedly this is like a rule: you sell half of your copy, no matter what. I mean, if your circulation is somewhat on par with your audience, supposedly you sell half of your circulation in 1 month, the next quarter in a year, and the next quarter in, I don't know, 3 years. And this is exactly what happened to me.
I think if it's going well, I mean, I think that's the business model of the publishing world, isn't it? Basically, they kind of. I mean, I've been lucky enough to have a few books published, and I think the first one that I had published was probably still not paid its advance back, to be honest. Like didn't exactly set the charts on fire, but I mean, it's quite a conservative business model, isn't it? Really, because like you say, the costs are so high, and it's difficult. It's difficult to get it out, and difficult to do it well, isn't it? Really?
Yeah,
I think I was so impressed that you did it all on your own, though, because that was because you self-published, didn't you?
Yeah. I approached a couple people, and then realized pretty quickly that my ideas didn't really fit within their commercial ambitions. I'm
sure once they took a look at the flat plan.
That was funny because
they were like, oh, okay.
Yeah, pretty big German publishing house that had previously published like biographies, like I don't know, football biographies and stuff. Like they approached me when they heard about it,
right?
And I think I lined it out in an email to them, like what I was planning, and I think I never even heard back from them
reply.
Again. Yeah,
it was pretty ambitious.
Yeah. So, and then I had a Japanese publishing house that I think at least they wanted to I think maybe a third of the circulation. They wanted to just buy it straight off and which is also why I went through the pain of having a full Japanese translation and everything, and then they jumped ship like last minute.
Well, I didn't know that.
And I mean publishing, as far as doing it myself is concerned, it wasn't really much other than like finding a facilitator that like has a storage and his shipping technology or hooked up to the book's website.
Yeah,
and that was pretty much it.
Yeah, I mean, these days you can self-publish like really easily, can't you? You know,
I think so.
With fulfillment and all these things.
That's exactly what it was.
Yeah. So do you look back on with your new perspective and the new experience that you've got? Are you tempted to do another snowboarding project? I've seen that's a question you get asked quite a lot, really, because I've been doing some research and seeing, would you do another film? Like.
So I think actually, I mean, I would like to do a follow-up to Current State. Like that'd be something that I thought about like pretty much right after
another book.
Yeah, but
the
actually,
scars have healed.
Maybe it probably took a good year.
Yeah,
for me to. But I actually thought about kind of in this approaching the electronic digital medium with the same naiveness that I approached the book with. Like that would be something I'd be excited to do.
Right.
Like maybe do a digital version that's updated, that's kind of, combined with film, kind of what, maybe with a podcast, but something that like really combines the multimedia capabilities of, say, like an iPad magazine or something.
Yeah.
It's still mind-boggling to me that there's not really much happening in that space. Because
especially when you look at kind of like Kindle, for example, just like that format, it's just so one-dimensional, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's strange to me because I think, well, it's really not that strange because I kind of think that everyone's still kind of waiting. Everyone's in this waiting period and seeing of who comes up with a good solution because it's super expensive, So, and you're not. And if I look at, like, for instance, the newspaper, I have a weekly newspaper subscription, and they have an iPad app, so I have both, and the iPad apps just they just suck.
Yeah, they're really bad.
It's a beefed up PDF, and occasionally there's like sound bites in there, and maybe there might be a little piece of motion, moving pictures, but to really look at it as this new format of being able to have one consistent kind of narrative, like what a magazine used to do.
Yeah.
That's it's weird to me that no one picked up on the format of the magazine. And I remember, you might remember this, I think it's still around a little bit, but it never picked up, is the first like digital magazines that, you could, I don't know what they were called, like you could like flip through them, but then the ad would have like a video.
Yeah.
But it had the same, how could you say that? Like a closedness, you have a compact format that has a beginning and an end.
Had a coherence, like a narrative coherence.
Yeah. And it's something that, certainly you could update it afterwards, but it's something that isn't as bottomless as a website where you scroll and it just relinks you to the next article. I find that to be the biggest obstacle of like digital consumption, is the bottomlessness. I get so irritated by that. I'd rather read. It's funny. I have both. I have my iPad with the newspaper and I have the physical one here. I always read the physical one because I look at it, I know how long an article is. I know, it's a page. It's something that's beyond the tactility. It's graspable, like tangible.
Yeah.
What am I looking at? And I think
a bit more of an, probably shit phrase, but analog experience. Like actual, like a complete experience. Like read that at beginning to end.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something that everyone's getting to grips with the digital age, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like how you can. Because like you say, the magazine, like the world that a magazine gives you was it. I interviewed a skateboard magazine editor a couple of episodes ago, and the feedback from that was incredible because it was really obvious from everybody that got into it so much they enjoyed it was that's what they missed. They missed the idea that it was like a window onto a subculture that
Yeah.
you were getting in your hands every month, and
Yeah.
you can get that with a digital experience, but not as readily, I don't think. It's just more, like you say, it's just more like a stream, isn't it? Like an endless stream.
But I do think that if you did work specifically against something being a stream, then you could have at least a similar appreciation for someone else having compiled this specific content or produced specifically for you, and it's something you get, once a month.
Yeah.
And it's really, it's the best, and everything that has been pre-selected. Like I don't know. I don't really.
Interesting idea though. Definitely.
So,
but you've been snowboarding, you were saying, a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I think I was always. I never really, from the actual activity.
You still rode.
Yeah, I still rode. I think there might have been a year or two where it had a weird, I'd almost say a negative vibe around it.
For you personally?
For me personally, but more for the sake, more in terms of, I think that I was so eager to go, to see what was next.
Right.
That going snowboarding felt like...
regressive.
Yeah, kind of. It felt like shit. I should know what's next, and I don't. And then going back to snowboarding, I couldn't enjoy the snowboarding. So, and I think, not that I necessarily know what's next. I still don't.
Yeah.
But I think I've come to terms with it, and so I started enjoying snowboarding again. And plus, I think I started enjoying or going on really good snowboarding trips again, and
fun
realize,
trips.
Yeah,
the good stuff.
And so I think you can be as burnt out or as eager to move on, but if you go to Baldface or something and you just
not going to take long before you're going to be like, actually, this is
and so I mean,
it's all right. This
so never really had a huge dip in my appreciation for it, but it's definitely it's I have more fun snowboarding now, much more I think than I've had probably 3 years ago.
Is that one of the reasons that you sort of packed it in so early then? Because you were 27, 28, were you?
Yeah.
Was it about that?
Yeah, probably 20. Yeah, probably 20. Yeah, 28, 29. Yeah, I don't think it's kind of weird. People always say that, you left at your peak. And I was like, no, man, I milked the shit out of it. And that's what my impression was.
Right.
Because I think maybe as early as the second robot food film, I was like, wow, this is exactly what we did last year, And so
that's so funny, because the perception of that film to everybody else was, I think, not that.
Yeah.
know?
But when you look at it specifically, the 3 robot food films, and there's Afterbang, Lame, and then there's After Lame, and Lame was a polished, perfectionized version of Afterbang. It's the exact same thing, but we just got better at presenting it. And I think everyone felt that way, which is why also we changed it up really weird in the third year. And then going from there, I think I still had ambitions to snowboard and do tricks and all this stuff, but I'd almost say at least half of my motivation in the following years, when I did 91 Words and all this, was making a film. Or
they got more and more personal. They got more and more like it was following your own vision. That's what it seemed.
Yeah.
Having an idea and thinking, I can tell this story in this certain way.
Yeah. And I think just changing up for myself, oh, this is different. It's different trying to make a film about a bunch of different snowboarders than just following myself around for, so that was, and so to me, this kind of trying to change it up started very early. And then by the time, I was, 28, so 2008 or so, I was pretty ready to kind of see what else was out there.
Right. Because I guess would that have been 10 years?
10 years ago, yeah.
But the career, I mean, that you
pretty
you
much.
I think I first saw you ride Aaron Style, maybe 99.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. I think 90. Wait, hold on.
When Stefan Gimpel won.
Yeah, was
You
that
were
the-
young as well. You were like 17 then, if I remember rightly.
So yeah, I mean, I finished school when I was 19, so that's when I always considered like that's when I turned pro. you know?
Right.
I mean, obviously, there's no such thing. There's no such like a harsh point as in skateboarding where someone else has to turn you pro. It's like, do you snowboard for most of the time? Yeah, you're probably
Yeah.
pro. So, and
Yeah, it's
I didn't do
pretty
anything.
low bar.
Yeah, I didn't do anything else, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
you know?
sure.
I think, but as far as, I mean, anything that led to that point is maybe part of a teenage career.
Sure.
I think I might have even, what was it? I think in 90, yeah, it's probably right, because 98, that was like a pivotal point where I think Aaron Style they tried to branch out and they did 3 contests. The big one in Innsbruck, then the one up at Seegrube, which was like a jump into a quarter pipe, like real snow, like an actual snowboard contest. And then they did the third one was in Munich, a quarter pipe contest, indoor. They only did it one time. And so, of course, I mean, I wasn't invited to the Innsbruck one because I was basically a nobody, but I won the one up at Seegrube. And then, because I think Jim Rippier or someone didn't show up to Munich, I got the local spot and I ended up winning. So I won 2 out of those 3. So they were like, all right.
So that's what got you into the next year at Innsbruck.
I think me and Gimple were like the 2 that they invited to the big one.
Yeah, because who was I can't remember his name, the American rider.
Crawford?
Andrew Crawford.
Yeah, he was second.
He was second, wasn't he? He gave, I remember, because because you did, if I remember rightly, you did like switch backside 7 at that, did you, or something?
Maybe, yeah,
and basically he was like all kind of going like, Jesus, you know, look at these kids.
Yeah.
You know? But so that was like the point where you started to think, okay, like, you know, this could be a career.
I think before that. No, way before that.
Really?
Way before that. Like,
Yeah.
I saw like Board with the World with Craig Kelly when I was 12, and I was like, that's what I'm going to do.
Oh, really?
Like,
Right.
No doubt about it.
So that from that, okay,
Pretty
that's,
much.
that's
Like,
cool.
no,
Right.
I was like fanatic, like absolutely ridiculously fanatic about it.
Did you skate first?
Yeah, a little bit. But I mean, I think, definitely. I started skateboarding when I was like 7 or something. But it's not that that I had certainly connected the two, you know. Like, yeah, I wouldn't take like street cred as a skater, and then that, you know, that, like, it's like, yeah. I also, you know, I skated and I didn't play tennis, but it would be as
relevant.
as relevant to my
Yeah.
snowboarding almost, and
So it was you and your brother grew up snowboarding.
yeah,
Boris.
yeah, and he's 3 years older, so I kind of, you know, I did everything that he did, you know,
Yeah.
just following, and then he skated, and then I think I got my first skateboard when I was 6, and I like his snowboard passed down to me when I was 9.
Yeah.
So I started snowboarding, like actual snowboarding, when I was probably 10 in 1990, and then yeah, and I think pretty quick, like I'd say, I mean, felt like a long time, but between that, but when we started, and then it's pretty obvious that there was something like being sponsored and all these things, and like writing contests, and like that really picked up a lot of pace, like this whole subculture thing. And
Yeah.
and someone this like classic sports journalist asked me like a year ago or so about like what made it attractive, and I realized when I thought about it, I think it was snowboarding was, for me, part of the same bubble of American culture that like surrounded ET and BMX bikes, and
Right.
and to me, that like when I think about it back, like
That's really
it's
interesting.
incredible how attractive that seemed to me. Like,
Yeah.
even now, like I'm almost
It's hard-
I get goosebumps when I think about the emotions that I can kind of reconnect when I think about like ET and like seeing like the first vert ramps and skaters and then snowboarders, and there was like it was so incredibly exciting. Like,
right. So that's what you were attracted to, like, almost like the exoticness of it.
yeah, and I mean, I think anything from the US, like it felt like the promised land when I was like 10, 11, 12. Like it was ridiculous.
Where were you brought up?
Here in Munich.
In Munich.
Yeah.
Right. So
And
why do you think it was so appealing?
I don't think it's particular. I don't think it was particularly like my. I would think it wasn't my particular environment or vicinity. I think that was German, West German culture, probably even more East German culture. I could imagine that they,
Sure.
and for them it was
Even
obviously
more exotic,
even more promised land. But I mean, think about it, like rap music, like Chucks. Like I remember through friends of my parents getting a pair of Chucks sent from the US because I wasn't able to get them in like size 1 or whatever I needed.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. You could see it. You could see that culture, couldn't you? But like it wasn't readily available like it is now.
Yeah,
and you had to work at it, didn't you? To
Yeah.
get it, to experience it.
Yeah, and I think it's just the and it's really funny because I encounter this type of attractiveness a lot of times now in like brand work where it comes down to like mystification. If you're able to mystify whatever it is enough to where it seems like untangible in a way, if too much information about something is available, it's not that interesting, And so that was, I think, especially as a kid, where you expect, depth and miracles everywhere, it's like you just see the codes and all these things, and you don't know what they mean, but it's incredibly exciting. And so, to me, like, I don't know. I remember everyone, all my friends, like every like optic store that we came across, we asked if they had like Oakley stickers. Like it was, and those were as valuable as like, I don't even know today, like you could give me a brand new MacBook Pro, it would not even be close to the value of an Oakley sticker in 1991. Like,
right, that's brilliant.
It's childish essentially, but it's awesome,
But everyone can. I'm sure everyone listening to this is going to empathise with it.
Yeah,
because it's a really recurring theme.
Yeah.
in the podcast.
And then we're back at growing up. I think the pain of growing up is also like disillusion. I don't know how you could say that, disillusioning yourself or whatever. To where you realize that, well, some of these mystified codes have no depth. There's nothing. There's only the shoe, and that's it. Or there's, and me and my best friend were laughing about this the other day because he was saying like, yeah, man. It's sometimes he feels like he's like emotionally dull, like compared to what he used to feel as a teenager, and we came up with this horribly sounding analogy, but we definitely laughed pretty hard because we remember we were at this competition in '92.
Just you and Minnie.
Yeah. I'm not sure if his wife is going to appreciate this now, but
I can cut his name. If
no, he knows. We were like, I think she'll know what he meant. But we talked about the feeling that Burton had a booth there. We didn't, of course, we had no sponsors and anything. Burton was the pinnacle of the culture, and probably still is. And they had a booth with next year's gear, which was like, that was like seeing into. It was literally, and I remember that was the year where next year's boot was. Do you remember the 2-tongue boot? Yeah, it was a boot with tongues on the lateral sides.
Like, what is this?
Yeah. And it was the second year, so it was like wild leather, and the tongue was red. And it's literally like, even to this day, when I think about seeing the boot, it was like. Is almost like a sexual experience because it's like there's some tactility and it represented everything, this whole culture and it's something from the future and we talked about, like, he was saying, like, do you remember this boot? And
he had the same experience as well.
Yeah, I think so. I think we talked about this specific experience of seeing this boot,
brilliant.
Seeing this boot, and he was saying, like, like if I try to think about my life today. And what comes close to like the experience of seeing this boot, he was like, maybe it's like the birth of my son. And we're like, so
wow,
yeah, and And yeah, you know, this is like, I think, like when I think back to this, like now, and actually Minnie's son is my godchild. It's like I can kind of like you start empathizing a lot more with kids because, you know, if they throw a tantrum or if they're mad or if they're happy, I mean, of course they're trying to play you, but I think they're actually this happy. They're actually like, it's. I think the emotional, the curve, your emotional curve as a kid is incredible, and yeah.
So did it live up to it when you made it over there? Because obviously you were lucky enough to spend
for the majority of the time it did.
You know, relatively speaking, quite soon after, that was your life, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I mean, I did have a lot of these moments where these words suddenly met. Like I remember, probably in like '99 or something, or '98. I was kind of like on the rookie roster at Salomon, but it was pretty clear that I was one of the guys who might make it to the pro roster. And I went to the SPC camp in Hintertux, and it was Salomon week. And I checked into the hotel, and it's like, oh, the receptionist looked at the list. And she's like, Benedek, oh, Benedek, you are rooming with Jason Ford. And to me,
yeah, you were like,
it was like literally Jason Ford meant the guy with blonde hair and Scream of Consciousness who did this pow turn, and then he made this gesture with his hand that was like cutting the film. I don't know, or it was ridiculous that was an actual person that I was going to be spending, you know, like this. I mean, I was 18, you know, and it's still so strong. So I think for a long time, this was still like really valid and alive. This mystified
this
world.
wonder, sense of wonder is what you're describing, basically.
Yeah, and you know, and then, and I think at some point, it did feel, I have to say, it did feel like you climb like a long ladder into the clouds, because that's where you want to go, and you get to the top and there's nothing there. Like I certainly had that at, you know, maybe third year of robot food, and you know, maybe like suddenly like knowing, you know, Peter Line, JP Walker, like not that I'm good friends with those guys, but I got to know them, and they started being real people. And I mean, Joni Malmi filmed with us, so suddenly some of the people that they were kind of ahead of this of me in my like snowboarding career. They were already up there when I was still feeling like I was way further down, looking up at the clouds. So for instance, Joni Malmi was definitely part of this world that I had looked up to, and then like, you know, spending like a season with him definitely like makes it very, very tangible, and like, and the mystification is just that it's a normal person, you know? And also I think the very, I mean, funny realization that people who really push trends don't necessarily know what those codes specifically mean. You know, they only grab them from somewhere and then they distribute them. But I think I'd certainly had a point where there was kind of like a stale realization that it's kind of all smoke and mirrors.
Really?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And
was that disillusioning?
Totally.
Right.
Absolutely.
It must have been.
And to this
point, will that always happen though? Do you think? Is that just a natural
probably
thing that will happen? Because everyone experience. I mean, I've never been in your position, but people I've spoken to who have definitely seem to reach this level of disillusionment.
Yeah.
You know, maybe it's. Do you think it's inevitable?
It might be, and I'm kind of. I think it also depends on what happened. Like, what is that specific culture?
Yeah.
What happens at the top, and is there something that leads from there to somewhere else? You know, I think I could imagine if you are incredibly excited about, you know, Hollywood and actors and celebrities and film, and you end up, you know, you become a director and that's all you want, then I'm sure, of course, at some point, if you did reach the top, you would think like, oh, it's very banal. But I could see that you find like that culture or that discipline, for instance, filmmaking, has very different ways of still being able to keep that illusion going more than, say, sports.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
But generally, I would probably say, it's inevitable. I think.
So did you find it hard when you, or was it it's such a funny question after that, but or were you relieved?
No, I found it hard, I think.
You did?
I think, I mean, not hard in the sense like, oh, what am I going to do about what am I going to do now? But more in the sense that, and then we're back at growing up. It's like, wow, if this is hollow, then what else is hollow? And then suddenly, so I certainly think that the kind of cynical person I am, I'm certainly a little cynical and a little misanthropic, and I think that's probably stems from not believing in illusions very much anymore.
From that experience, maybe.
I think so. Yeah.
Really, right?
You know, and but it also, I mean, it has its upside too, because I don't really get freaked out by too much anymore. You know, I would, you know, I think I could be in a very authoritarian situation, let's say, you know, with CEOs or whatever, and I don't have to, I wouldn't have to fight this situation, but I wouldn't have to like bow down to it either. I would try. I think I like seeing this disillusionment once kind of makes you look at all the other possible illusions equally skeptical, and I think that is in itself a little bit of a peace of mind, you know, that you can kind of think like, yeah, you know, we're all just trying to wing it, everyone, you know, and it's definitely would be nice if that wasn't the case, but
yeah, so it kind of it's almost like you taking the pressure off yourself.
Yeah.
If you kind of at peace with it.
Yeah.
Wow. So what are you? That spark, sense of wonder, if you like. Where do you get that now? You mentioned sometimes you get it in the work. You know, can you still find it in snowboarding?
I can find it in. I can find it in the physical flow, which also snowboarding can create.
Can you also get that from work?
That's a very good question. I doubt it, actually, because it's. I had this moment like a year ago. I went to, actually, you might know the band No Twist. I went to their concert. They're from Munich, or from the outskirts of Munich.
Yeah, they were on your films, right?
Yeah. I'd actually never met him until recently. I met the drummer, but I went to their concert a year ago, and I watched the drummer on a solo, how he just, you know, totally like seemed like he forgot the world around him, and I looked at this and I'm like, that's flow. You know, like that's when, you know, there's nothing else. It's just that, and there's no ego. There's no rationality. There's nothing, and I think that really is only possible in like sports, music. Maybe that's it. Sex, but it's kind of the same. I think something that's
a physical
thing that like
outcome.
Connects to something very primal, maybe even.
Yeah.
And so, in that sense, if you ask me, do I get the spark? That's one spark that I can get from snowboarding. It's like you ride down somewhere, and the intuitiveness of doing that, I think, is absolutely incredible. And as much as I'm skeptical about the quality of the human being, I'm pretty amazed of nature and the miracle that we live in. So kind of almost the more primal a human being can be, the more I can almost appreciate it. I mean, the momentarily, of course, you know.
I understand.
So when I see these moments, I'm like, I feel like we have a place, you know. We have a quality because everything else is so amateurish, you know. Our thinking and our everything. I mean, we're just like these bags of patheticness, you know, walking around and like trying to communicate, and we all, you know, we're all in pain because of something, and then, you know, it's such a tragic comedy, the world, you know, like it could be so good, but we just like, and this kind of saves me from becoming a complete like cynicist, is like that's possible. You
those
know?
moments are still possible.
Those moments are possible, and yeah. So I do see that in snowboarding.
Yeah. What? It's a general question, really, but it's kind of related to what we're talking about. What is inspiring you right now?
Journalism is.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Just because I think it's I don't know. It's like then we're at the maybe. Where the world's heading, I think, like kind of standing up for the right values and also debate. I think like that's something I'm like, I don't know, also the painfulness of communication, like with people that have different opinions, like and I think journalism, there's something very like altruistic about it, that it's really like it's necessary. We need, you know,
more than ever right now.
More than ever, and it's something I really appreciate the effort that people put into this, as opposed to recuperating opinion.
Yeah,
you know, like actually trying to, I don't know, have an objective point as much as that's possible.
Yeah,
and so I'm inspired by people who know stuff, like, and who have that attitude. Yeah.
Oh, we did. Wow, that was an hour. It's gone pretty quick.
That was quick.
Yeah. So where's the next riding? You said you did. You were riding the other day, right? Where were you riding?
Rode in Kitzbühel.
Did a front
3 days ago.
Did a front seven. How's that?
It's pretty hilarious because so I was riding with Minnie, my old friend, and we both. I mean, he has 2 kids, so he rode less than I did in the past 5 years. But we both kind of like pushed each other to do like little, you know, 540s and like it's like 10-foot jumps.
Yeah.
And surprisingly, like the muscle memory is still there to do that.
Yeah.
And then at the very end of the day, there's one little bigger jump, and I was like, come on, we should try frontside sevens. We know, I mean, we can do those. And I was so thrilled, like physically thrilled when I landed, that like almost like the blood shot to my head, that I almost fainted like on the ride out.
Wow.
Like I had to like inhale to like not just like faint on my in the landing. But yeah, it was considering it was like a 10-foot 720.
Yeah.
The rush was probably like hitting like Chad's Gap or something.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. And are you going to be doing? You got any more trips? Anything this winter? I'm
actually going to Chatter Creek for 5 days in March.
Nice.
A couple friends, like, and a couple people I don't know. But yeah, I realized it's kind of worth it to spend a little extra and go to those places where you kind of get it out of your system, you know. Those 4 days on one of those lodges. That's
kind of what I'm thinking these days.
It's like
go less and do more.
Yeah,
if you know what I mean. Go to Japan every 2 years.
Yeah, that's kind of and that's kind of what I want to do, is like find a way to also be able to afford that, to maybe, you know, go every other year, do something like that.
Yeah,
and then not stress about every mediocre day.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm pretty excited about that actually.
Nice. Yeah. Well, enjoy.
Yeah, thanks.
And David, that's been brilliant. Thanks for coming on, man.
Cool. Yeah, thank you, man. Thanks for having me.
No worries. So there you go. That was my chat with David Benedek, and yeah, how good was that? Such a brilliant conversation. I've got to say, I was praying I didn't do a Stentiford and lose the damn thing. But thankfully, no. And what an amazing perspective David's got. And it's a shame that the tape stopped when it did, really, because we carried on chatting for a good hour afterwards, which I probably could have done as a part 2, to be honest. But yeah, we just carried on catching up, really. Went and had a coffee. And yeah, great to see him. Great to hear from him. And I think you'll agree, interesting fella. I hope everybody enjoyed it as much as I did. So it's been a while since we've had Feedback Corner. And I do have to say, I continue to be blown away by the response to the podcast. I know I mention this every week, but we've really leapt up a level in terms of listeners in the last few weeks. And the broad church that is the Looking Sideways listenership continues to expand into ever more random corners of the globe. And I also wanted to read out a bit of an email I got from a listener the other week, which has really humbled me, to be honest. Now, it is a bit of a Mark Maron move, this, and I hope you can forgive me. But it's been a while since we had Feedback Corner, as I say. So yeah, I thought I'd read some of this one out. Dear Matt, firstly, let me say how glad I am that I found your podcasts. My mate had just taken a 6 shot of Ben Skinner at Porthleven, which got me looking online, and I found my way here. I've been a lost soul for a number of years, and I'm currently going through a journey of healing. Your podcasts are giving me part of the solution to that puzzle. When I'm spiraling and getting angsty, angry or down, I can plug in, listen, and allow my mind to break. The stories you cover and the inspirational topics keep me engaged when nothing else will, which is impressive, as usually I cannot shut my mind up, which is always doing its own thing. It's helping keep me from falling down that dark hole again. So thanks for that. And not only that, but you and your guests are helping me fill in the blanks I've been struggling with in my life. You've got me out riding again on my local hour drive dry slope. It may have taken me 20 minutes to get out of the car first time due to anxiety, but I did it, and now I'm riding every freestyle night I can. I've even got a training board at home, and I'm really working on my rail game. Every time I listen, I come away more motivated to live my life in a way that makes me happy, and I can feel the fight growing within me again. I used to never stop, and then for a few years I couldn't get going, even when I wanted to, and that's changing now. In particular, I found the last podcast with James Stentiford to be very close to home. I felt a lot of similarities to James, yet he was able to make some calls that I couldn't. So going to take on some of the Silverback's advice as well as some of the other guests and see where it takes me. Thanks again for helping change lives. Wow. Firstly, thanks so much for sending that in. You know who you are. I'm not going to say your name because I don't think that would be too fair, really. But yeah, obviously I was massively moved by that. And this is really not my style, as friends of mine will attest. But I have to say that's basically made the last 11 months of doing this extremely worthwhile. As I've said more than a few times, I'm just doing this in my spare time, really. So to hear that people are enjoying it so much and getting so much out of it, as this listener evidently is, really is amazing. So thanks, man. Thanks for sharing that story with me. Thanks for giving me permission to read it out on the show. Stay in touch. And yeah, hope you enjoyed this one. Elsewhere, I've got a bit of a favour to ask, actually. So I note that The Guardian are running a podcast column. Each week, they're asking people to recommend their favourite podcast. Now that I've cracked over 100 5-star reviews on iTunes, and we've established that the new and noteworthy wheeze on there is a crock of shit, perhaps I could ask the great Looking Sideways listenership to recommend me to this resource. As with all these requests, more listeners means more of these podcasts, which more and more of you seem to be enjoying. So as an effort to enjoyment ratio, I think asking you to email The Guardian and recommend this is a pretty good deal, really. So yeah, if anyone fancies it, you can find the email on the Guardian site. And let's see if we can do it. All right, that's enough absolute yibble from me for another episode. Thank you once again to David Benedek for coming on the show. Thanks to you all for listening. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Nice one.